What if I told you that the reason you can send a passive-aggressive text to your group chat right now is because several million years ago, a giant cat the size of a Mini Cooper wanted to eat your great-great-great-grandmother? Yeah, let that sink in. Every we need to talk, every gossip session at the office coffee machine, every single time you've ever successfully warned a friend, don't date that guy, trust me, all of it traces back to a survival mechanism. Not a cultural milestone, not some cozy campfire storytelling tradition, a nightmare, a literal, running for your life, screaming across a savanna nightmare. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you in school, language wasn't invented so we could write poetry or argue about pineapple on pizza. Language was a weapon, a biological radar system. And it was built under the worst deadline pressure imaginable, the figure this out or become lunch deadline. So let's set the scene. Picture the African savanna a couple million years ago. No skyscrapers, no smartphones, no 24-hour convenience stores, just wide-open grassland, blistering heat, and you, a scrawny, slow, embarrassingly under-equipped primate with none of nature's actual weapons. No claws, no fangs worth mentioning, no fur thick enough to stop anything. You're basically the before picture in a how not to survive the wild pamphlet. And roaming that same grassland, a superpredator, so devastatingly efficient, evolution basically gave up trying to improve the design. This wasn't your average lion having an average Tuesday. This was an ambush killer built like a linebacker with switchblades for teeth, capable of taking down prey many times its own size, and this is the part that should terrify you, it could do it in near silence. No warning roar, no dramatic movie villain monologue. Just death, appearing out of the tall grass like a bad Wi-Fi connection. Sudden, unexplained, and absolutely ruining your day. Now imagine you're out there, foraging, minding your business, maybe complaining to a friend about how the fruit trees over the hill just aren't as good this season. And somewhere in the grass, 30 feet away, something the size of a small car is deciding whether today is the day you die. You can't outrun it. You can't outfight it. You are, biologically speaking, a walking snack platter. So what do? You can't fight back with muscle. You don't have the claws, you don't have the speed. There's only one weapon evolution left you with any room to upgrade, your brain. And specifically, your ability to make noise that means something. This is the part that should blow your mind. Modern science increasingly suggests that our jump from grunting like we're stuck in traffic to actual structured language wasn't a happy accident of civilization. It was survival tech. It was humanity's first ever emergency alert system, like if your phone's Amber Alert had evolved a voice box. Think about it like Netflix for a second. Netflix didn't invent recommendations because it wanted to be nice. It built an algorithm because if you couldn't quickly find something good to watch, you'd cancel your subscription, and the company would die. Survival pressure creates smart systems. And for early humans, canceling the subscription meant getting eaten. So the pressure was, arguably, a little higher than deciding between 3 new K-dramas. Or think of it like your group chat. Somebody spots a red flag on a first date, and within minutes, the whole friend group knows the guy's name, his job, and exactly which restaurant to avoid running into him at. That's not gossip for gossip's sake. That's a rapid threat alert system refined over literally millions of years, just now running on iPhones instead of instincts. Except our ancestors' version of the group chat wasn't about bad dates. It was about not dying. A specific alarm call that meant predator, that direction, that distance, move now, wasn't just useful. It was the difference between your bloodline continuing or ending abruptly in the jaws of something that had zero interest in negotiating. So here's the real question we're chasing in this video. How did a single, terrifying, now extinct superpredator apply so much evolutionary pressure that it may have jump-started the very trait that makes us human, our ability to talk, warn, plan, and cooperate as a group? Because this isn't just a story about a scary extinct animal. This is the story of how fear built friendship. How a monster in the grass may have quietly written the first rough draft of human society. And by the end of this video, you're never going to look at a simple conversation the same way again. All right, let's actually meet our villain, because this thing deserves a name, a mugshot, and possibly its own true crime documentary. Meet Dinofelis. Translation, terrible cat. Which honestly feels a little on the nose, but scientists aren't exactly known for their marketing skills. Dinofelis wasn't your classic Smilodon, the saber-toothed tiger you're picturing from every Ice Age cartoon. It was leaner, more like an oversized leopard that skipped leg day and went straight to core and jaw strength instead. It had elongated canine teeth, not the giant saber swords of its more famous cousins, but still very much will ruin your entire skeleton teeth. And critically, it was believed to be an ambush predator. Not a chaser, not a run-you-down-across-the-plains kind of hunter, a hider, a waiter. The kind of predator that sits in the tall grass with the patience of someone waiting for their ex to text back, and then, the second you're distracted, commits fully. And here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. There's actual fossil evidence, real, physical, put it under a microscope evidence, suggesting Dinofelis had a taste for early hominins specifically. In the 1980s, a paleoanthropologist named C.K. Brain was digging through cave deposits in South Africa, specifically at a site called Swartkrans, and found something that reads like a forensic case file. Fossilized hominin skulls believed to belong to early human relatives with puncture wounds. Not random damage from rock slides or erosion, puncture wounds that matched almost perfectly the spacing of canine teeth from large cats. Basically, evolution's version of finding a bite mark that matches a specific set of dental records. Let that marinate for a second. We're not talking about early humans occasionally getting into an unlucky scuffle with a big cat. We're talking about a predator that appears, based on physical evidence, to have specifically targeted our ancestors as a food source. Repeatedly, consistently. Almost like early hominins were the seasonal menu item that just kept showing up. Imagine being a species with a reputation, like showing up to a dinner party and every predator in the room already knows you're the appetizer. Now, from a purely competitive standpoint, this is humiliating. Every other predator on the savanna had a plan A: run faster, hit harder, hide better, or just be too big to bother with. Early humans had none of that. We were slow. We were breakable. We didn't have thick hides or genuinely useful claws. If natural selection was running a job interview, we'd have been rejected in the first round for lacking relevant qualifications. But here's the twist that turns this from a horror story into an underdog story. Physical weakness has a funny way of forcing biological creativity, because a lone human against Dinofelis is basically a done deal. But a group of humans? Humans who can coordinate, who can warn each other, who can say, in whatever primitive way they had, hey, something's in the grass to the left, don't go that way. That changes the math entirely. This is where the concept of sentinel behavior comes in. Something you can actually still observe today in social animals like meerkats. Ever notice how meerkats take turns standing guard while the rest of the group forages? One meerkat isn't smarter than the others. The group just realized, evolutionarily speaking, that having a dedicated lookout beats everyone individually gambling on not getting eaten. It's basically nature's version of splitting Netflix accounts. Someone's got to be the one who remembers the password and keeps an eye on things so everyone else can relax a little. Early hominins were almost certainly under the exact same pressure. Except the stakes were become a permanent part of the fossil record. If you were foraging in a group and a Dinofelis was stalking through the grass, the group's survival depended entirely on someone noticing early and, more importantly, being able to communicate that information fast enough for everyone to react. A grunt wasn't going to cut it forever. Uh-oh doesn't tell your buddy which direction to run, how far away the threat is, or whether it's already too late. And when the punishment for miscommunication is death by ambush predator, evolution starts favoring the individuals and the groups who can pass along more specific, more urgent, more useful information. This is the exact biological hinge point scientists believe may have pushed early hominins toward more complex vocalizations. Not poetry, not casual conversation. Emergency broadcasting. The prehistoric equivalent of an Amber Alert, except instead of a description of a car, it's large cat, 20 feet, that bush, run, and once that system existed, once groups that could communicate threats survived more often than groups that couldn't. You've basically switched on an evolutionary feedback loop that never turns back off. Once, a group of early hominins figured out that specific warning calls kept them alive. Evolution did what evolution always does. It started rewarding whoever was best at the new skill. Individuals who could communicate more clearly, more specifically, more usefully survived at higher rates. They passed on genes, they passed on habits, and slowly, generation after generation, the pressure compounded. Think of it like an app that keeps getting updates because users keep demanding better features. Version 1.0 was probably just alarm calls, basic predator nearby pings. But over time, the users, in this case, early hominin groups constantly getting picked off by Dinofelis and other apex predators, needed more detail. Not just danger, but danger, that direction, then danger, that direction, that distance, then eventually something resembling actual planning. If we split up here and regroup over there, we reduce the risk for everyone. That's not just communication anymore. That's strategy. That's teamwork. That's the biological rough draft of literally every group project you've ever been part of, except in this version. If someone doesn't pull their weight, the entire group dies instead of just getting a bad grade. And this is the part that really reframes the whole story. Cooperation itself becomes a survival technology. Early humans couldn't outmuscle Dinofelis. We couldn't outrun it. We couldn't outclaw it, but we could out-organize it. A predator, built for ambushing lone or small groups of prey, suddenly runs into serious trouble when the prey starts traveling in coordinated numbers, posting lookouts, sharing information, and reacting as a unit instead of a scattering of individual targets. It's the difference between a single unlocked phone getting hacked instantly versus a phone with two-factor authentication, a strong password, and someone constantly monitoring for suspicious activity. Same phone, same vulnerabilities on paper. Completely different outcome because of the system built around it. Dinofelis, for all its terrifying efficiency, was still an ambush predator, built to exploit isolation, confusion, and surprise. Every one of those weaknesses gets closed off the moment a group can communicate complex, specific threat information in real time. Suddenly, the predator's best weapon, the element of surprise, starts failing more often than it succeeds. And here's a detail that makes this even more fascinating. Some researchers argue this pressure didn't just push us toward language. It may have pushed us toward bigger brains, period, processing detailed social and environmental information, tracking who said what, remembering which routes were dangerous last time, coordinating group movement. All of that demands serious cognitive horsepower. It's basically the ancient version of your phone needing more RAM because you installed too many apps. Except in this case, the app was survival, and the RAM was an increasingly complex brain that could handle language, memory, and social coordination simultaneously. This is sometimes referred to, loosely, as part of the broader social brain hypothesis. The idea that primate brains, including ours, ballooned in size not primarily to solve math problems or invent tools, but to manage increasingly complex social relationships and group dynamics. And what creates more urgent, high-stakes social complexity than a predator that's specifically hunting your species and can only be countered through group coordination? It's almost poetic in a deeply unsettling way. The very trait that makes humans dominant today. Our ability to form massive, cooperative, communicating societies may trace its earliest roots not to some noble desire to connect, but to sheer terror, to the biological equivalent of a company only investing in better security after getting hacked really, really badly. We didn't evolve language because we wanted to write love letters or negotiate business deals. We evolved it because the alternative was extinction. Every watch out, every whispered warning, every piece of urgent information passed from one person to another traces back to a lineage of ancestors who survived specifically because they got slightly better at telling each other where the monster was hiding. And Dinofelis, it went extinct. The predator that may have helped force our ancestors into becoming better communicators didn't survive long enough to see the result of its own pressure. It's almost darkly ironic. The monster loses, but its legacy survives in every conversation, every warning, every group chat we've ever sent. We out-talked our way out of extinction. And it worked so well. The predator that started it all isn't even around to see how the story ended. So let's bring this all the way back to that question we opened with. What if your ability to speak today was actually a survival mechanism triggered by a nightmare from the past? Turns out, it might not be a metaphor. It might just be biology. Every single conversation you've had today, texting a friend OMW, warning your coworker about the passive-aggressive email that just landed, even just saying watch out when someone almost walks into traffic while staring at their phone. All of it may be running on software that was originally written under the absolute worst possible working conditions. Not in a lab, not in a classroom. On an open savanna with a silent, ambushing superpredator treating your ancestors like a recurring menu item. Dinofelis didn't just hunt early humans in a strange, backwards kind of way. It may have built us. It applied a kind of evolutionary pressure so specific, so relentless, that the only real countermeasure was cooperation, communication. The ability to say more than danger, to say where, how far, how fast, and what to do about it. And once that ability existed, it didn't stop at survival, it kept compounding. Better communicators formed tighter groups. Tighter groups shared more information. More information meant better decisions, better hunting, better protection, better everything. Eventually, that same system that once meant predator, that direction, move now, evolved into language sophisticated enough to write laws, tell jokes, fall in love, build empires, and yes, argue with strangers online about pizza toppings. It's genuinely wild to think that the foundation of human society, the thing that lets billions of us coordinate across cities, countries, and continents, might trace back to small groups of terrified hominins trying to keep each other alive against something we couldn't outmuscle. Only outthink, we didn't win because we were the strongest predator on that savanna. We weren't even close. We won because we learned to talk to each other before something learned to eat us. And somewhere along the way, talking to survive turned into talking, period, into the single most powerful tool our species has ever developed. So the next time you send a quick warning text, gossip with a friend, or even just complain about your day to someone who will actually listen, remember, you're not just socializing. You're running a survival program that's been in continuous development for millions of years, patched and updated generation after generation, all because something in the grass once decided humans looked like dinner. We out-talked extinction. And honestly, that might be the single greatest glow-up in the history of evolution. If this blew your mind even a little, that's exactly the reaction we're going for, because history and science are full of stories this wild, and most people never hear them. If you want more videos that take weird, terrifying corners of prehistory and turn them into something you'll actually remember, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started. And hey, if you made it all the way to the end of this one, drop a comment and tell us, if you'd been out on that ancient savanna, dodging a superpredator with nothing but your wits and your group chat energy, do you think you'd have survived? Or would you have been the one distracted, checking out a weird-looking rock, while Dinofelis quietly closed the distance? Let us know below, we read every comment. And honestly, some of you have wild survival instincts. See you in the next one.